So I'm going to welcome Sam
All right,
to the
let me
stage.
just give me. All right, is it good recording?
Yes.
Alrighty, well, I'm so glad there's so many of you, so thanks for showing up. Sorry, my second screen is there, so sometimes I may be looking in this direction. So if you've ever seen some of my presentations, I kind of like sometimes to go on some of the topics that the students bring up or are interested in. So I'm not sure today if there's any kind of questions in particular. It can be about anything. Last time I think we talked a lot about VR, AR, and fashion, and other types of things like that, or VR for when you don't have a lot of money. So is there any kind of like weird topic or niche that anybody wants to bring up or have questions related to today? All right. If there's
Hi, Sam. This is Joel Meshak from Nairobi. I'm definitely keen on AR in fashion because that's something I've been looking to kind of find how to implement. But there's just so many dynamics to the execution that I didn't know where to start really. So yeah.
Right. I would probably recommend watching the second video we did on it. But is there anything particular that you have questions about? Like, do you do fashion? Are you looking to, do you do like physical fashion? Do you do metaverse fashion? Or where are you going with this?
Yeah, I do, I'd say slow fashion, more like in a collections basis. But now I'm looking to transition into creating more like concepts for NFT fashion pieces. So it's not necessarily wearable fashion for metaverse, but things that I have ideas to make physically, but because of the constraints, I prefer to do them digitally. So kind of that transition. Then at the same time, I've also done graphic tees previously and trying to figure out how to do the AR based off of the graphic tees. So someone can like scan the graphic on the tee, then it comes alive and everything. So just trying to transition and kind of play in both worlds, kind of. Yeah.
Right. So so that doesn't turn into like a one-on-one mentoring session in this one. I'll give you an idea of the model I've been exploring with a local fashion designer in Montreal. So it's a fashion designer who does limited runs, meaning let's say for a month you can order a t-shirt, then when the orders are done, there's let's say 30 t-shirts made, they're delivered and sent to everybody. And as well, the fashion designer has a very good aesthetics and just came into NFTs. So what I suggested to them is to create kind of two NFT projects or identities, if you will. One where it's literally the garments for sale. So you buy the NFT and it allows you to unlock or get the garment and you get an NFT with it. So that could be a picture of the garment that's going to be created. What I recommended is to make either a 3D scan through photogrammetry, meaning you take a bunch of photos and it makes a 3D model, or you make a digital piece of clothing as a 3D object. But I think having that as a 3D NFT would be nice. And then the model works really well with what he does, right? Because he has a limited run. So you could say, I'm going to make 1,000 NFTs. Whoever buys it gets the shirt that they're buying. And at the end of the month, I'm going to burn whatever wasn't sold, and I'll ship. You can prove that you have your NFT. Maybe go on the website, and the clothing gets shipped to you. And so if there's only 30 sold, it becomes an addition of 1 out of 30, etc. Then the second NFT identity or website, if you will, would be more for like an editorial where you start to do. Well, what I would recommend to him is volumetric fashion shoots, right? So whether that's with real people, once again, with a 3D camera or photogrammetry, and you can also mix it with a completely digital environment. So you could do a kind of editorial, like something you'd see in a magazine, but in a volumetric way. So then you have the store, which really works with the way that he's selling clothing, where it's a limited run. And if I did that shirt 5 years ago, I'm never going to do it again. but you also have the artistic side where you're not just looking at like a boutique or Amazon of things to buy, but you're looking at more of like, okay, what's their style? What's their artistic statement? How are they pushing things further? And just generally the idea of pushing fashion into VR, AR, into 3D, there's a lot to be done there. So hopefully this kind of little suggestion or example can help you a little bit in your exploration.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Thank you.
My pleasure. Anybody else have any kind of topic they want to explore that's maybe a bit fringe or a bit, doesn't just fit in the regular VR, AR conundrum?
I have a quick input just to say something that just so you know, we have a chat for the voice channel. If you don't know, it can be reached on the top right corner of the channel that we're right now, all of us. On the top right, there is a bubble,
Okay.
like a comic bubble, and some people who are not able to speak in real time are going to be able to drop the questions over there.
I see. Right.
Read my question out loud if you want, Sam, because I already wrote something in the chat. So yeah, I thought it would be nice to get some ideas on how to bridge augmented reality into physical pieces, just to create like some sort of, I guess, installations where you can have this interaction between like having a physical piece in a space and then also people engaging with AR. That's something that I thought it would be interesting to like get some.
So it's a tricky one. AR is a tricky one. Basically, behind 98% of the AR services that you see, there's going to be like 2-3 companies. It's going to be Google, it's going to be Microsoft, and maybe Vuforia and a couple others. I forget the name of the folks who did the Pokemon Go. But basically, from those, let's say 4 or 5 companies, all of the other services will build upon. And so when you look at AR providers, if you're not building from Google, if you're not building from Microsoft, and even if you are, it's really hard to tell, is that still going to exist? Yeah, it was Niantic. Thank you, Reverse Butcher. It was it's really hard to tell and really kind of like get married to say, I'm going to make an AR piece and it's going to be in this room and is going to, or be in this street and is going to be there forever. So it's not just say that you shouldn't use them, but know that there will be cost, that we're kind of like in the early days. So it's very possible the platforms you use is not going to exist in 3 to 5 years. So this is obviously one of those things that's going to improve over the next years, or I think in 2 days, Facebook/Meta is going to announce their new VR/AR headset. And I do believe that this new headset, which is known internally as Cambria and kind of referred to as Quest Pro, I do believe this headset is probably going to be the opening doors to the augmented reality revolution, if you will. Because right now we've got these very expensive AR headsets, like $3,000 for the Magic Leap 2. And they're okay. They're showing a promise of the future. Whereas the new headset from Meta is going to be, well, really good VR, apparently comfortable enough to last 4 hours or more per day, which is right now, you kind of get sick after, well, you kind of get annoyed after 45 minutes. And also AR, right? And we're talking, the rumors are around $1,500 US. So I think it's really going to open the doors to galleries and artists to finally say, hey, I can have an AR project. Personally, in my own AR projects, I've done these ridiculous manual alignment processes, meaning let's say I make a AR piece in this room and there's like, a piece here that's going to connect to there. The way that I would set it up in the art gallery would be like, I know that I'm in this position, there's an X on the floor, and if I look at this position and I start the experience, it's going to be roughly aligned. And then if I press spacebar, I can move the world with my head. And when I press spacebar again, it stops moving. So there's probably smarter ways to do that, but you can also have very DIY, lo-fi ways to do augmented reality in terms of the programming aspect of things. But it's not at a point where it's like, oh yeah, of course, you just do this, and that, and you use this service, and it'll still work in 10 years, and things like that. So It's a tricky one, but once you buy an AR headset, right, it's like, of course, you're going to do something with it. Like if you're spending $3,000 or $1,500, you're not going to let it like just gather dust. Like you're going to do something with it.
Because I know people work with AR, but
people were what?
I think you can also do some AR stuff without necessarily having to have the headsets, like with all, like some apps and stuff, I guess, like errands and stuff like that. Like, I mean, let's say, for example, like you have a physical piece on the wall and you want people to open their phones, and when they're looking at the piece with their phones, they're going to see it animated, for example, in their phone. That's kind of what I envision. I mean, I wouldn't think of a site-specific AR installation with like, I'm more thinking about something playful that will add another layer of, digitality to the piece, I guess. Like,
so you're maybe thinking of like QR codes or just image recognition, which is much easier. These are older technologies, and it'll work. And it's just like, I'm thinking maybe more of like AR fashion, or you make a sculpture and you add an AR element to it. But yes, like taking a QR code or take an image through your cell phone, seeing it that way is like it's a good place to start, definitely. And that is much easier. And there are services like Vuforia that it's quite costly, but you can definitely get it get that kind of stuff done easily. There's something I want to touch on because I find it doesn't make much sense to do VR and AR for 2D, and so usually when we're talking about VR, AR, it's for 3D because it's literally a spatial thing. And with that being said, maybe one step further is instead of like making art on the computer and bringing it to VR, I definitely prefer making art in VR for VR or AR, etc. So there is one topic in my last mentorships that I saw come over and over again that is very important, which is the need to simplify the amount of geometry. So I thought I'd do a little demo here, and I haven't really done tech demos, so hopefully I don't mess it up. But let me try to share my screen here. Oh, this is annoying. Okay, there we go. Screen one. It's only going to go to 720p, so hopefully you can still see what's going on. Can you see the buttons I'm sharing on the screen?
Yep.
Or kind of? Let me stop, and I'll try to make the screen bigger for a sec. Okay, so basically there's a software called Simplygon, and if you're going to do VR AR, you have to be very cognizant of the amount of triangles that that your scene has. So we're talking about, especially if you want to do it on mobile devices, we're talking about 500,000 triangle max is probably what you're going to want to go for usually. So often people are not aware of their triangle count, and it just results in a lot of bad AR, bad VR, etc. So you can see my screen right now?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so here I've got a scene. I was working on this. With Mural Festival. So this artist sent me her piece, and if we look at it here, it's this little doodly doo is about 650,000 triangles. So there's a lot of optimization to be happening. Like here we see half of this capsule for the ear is actually hidden inside of the head. So, we're paying for these triangles in terms of the performance, but we're not getting we're not even seeing them. Or like even this sphere, right? I should be able to delete the part of the cheek that's inside of the body. Same thing with the nose, etc. Same thing with even just the mouth is 5,000 triangles. So that's a bit intense, and half of it is hidden inside of the body. And we see this over and over. The hand, we're not even seeing the hand, etc. So I'm just going to do this on an extremely low level. I want to show you this to kind of I point everybody to Simplygon, but I haven't really shown how to use it. So I'm just going to start from scratch. And by the way, Simplygon is free. It used to be like $30,000 a year, and most AAA games use Simplygon. Like we're talking about like multi-million-dollar games. They use Simplygon because it's just kind of like the best tool for the job. And it used to be quite expensive, but Microsoft purchased it and made it free for everybody to empower the metaverse to happen. Because as I mentioned, the metaverse, needs to happen on low-powered devices for everybody to get it. And the key to that is just you need good optimization technology. So it's kind of a community service for Microsoft to have purchased this and provided it for free. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select every piece of the geometry here. And here's my little Simplygon menu. By the way, this is available in Blender for free as well. And it's available in a bunch of other software. So when I go to add what's called an LOD component, we see here that I'm given a few options for template. If I go to basic, the main ones are going to be remeshing and reduction. And I think we've got the same thing here, remeshing and reduction. I'm going to go into the basic, and my favorite is remeshing. So reduction says I'm going to take the triangles and try to deal with them and optimize them as much as I can. Reduction does that, whereas remeshing says, nah, I'm just going to start everything from scratch and do it kind of my own way. And they're kind of slightly different algorithms, but they're both important, and you can play with them. So important is you do need a texture directory. So here I'm just going to put this folder so that I can put the textures somewhere, because this is going to be doing your UV unwrapping, and it's basically kind of going to do most of the technical job for you. Okay, so what do I need? I'm going to open the settings here. This is really, when you're doing remeshing, this is the important thing. So on-screen size, meaning like, let's say right now it's maybe 300 pixels wide, whereas right now it's like, this is a 4K screen, so it's maybe 2000 pixels wide. So this is the number you want here that matters. So let's say I'm going to put like 1000, but that's the main number you play with. And then I'm going to add I believe, base color or just color caster material. So what it's going to do is all of, this butterfly has a material that's orange, and the cheeks are pink and stuff like that. So it's going to take all of those material and make one map. So I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that this works. But you can see it was generally pretty easy. I have a folder. It's a remeshing algorithm. I tell it how many pixels on size on screen, and I give it a material color caster. So I'm going to hit the little button here, the yellow button, and now it's kind of a matter of like waiting 5 minutes for it to happen. And it should create an optimized version of this character that is maybe 5,000 triangles instead of 55,000. So yeah, I'm not sure if anybody has any questions. I know I kind of got into a little technical, side road here, but I was having these mentoring sessions, and every time I was like, oh, they don't know about this. And I've never really shown it. And if I just say, oh yeah, I use Simplygon, is going to be like, well, it's going to be a bit painful at first until you figure out what those 4 buttons are that you need to do. And frankly, the documentation online is kind of non-existent or inappropriate. Any other kind of topics related, or actually, let me just open the chat, see if there's any kind of questions that came up. Yeah.
So just, do you build this object within Simplygon, or would you build it like in Blender and then you bring it into this program to simplify it?
You build it in Blender, you build it in 3ds Max, and when you're ready to simplify it, you just open up Simplygon and process it as your kind of final step.
Okay, I just wasn't 100% sure.
And yeah, I mean, there's also, okay, so here we go. It's done. I think there was an error perhaps with the color mesh. Yeah, so it came out as all black. So obviously there's an error. But you can tell that it's merged everything. you can kind of also see the quality level. So see, it lost the detail inside of the sleeve is no longer existing. Whereas here, there's literally some space inside of the sleeve where the hand is. So it lost some details. Let's see how many triangles this is. This is 8,000 triangles. So let me try to redo the whole thing. I'm going to not use the color caster base color, but I'm going to see, let's just do automatic. Does that work? No. Template, physical, base color. Is that what I did last time? I don't remember. And let's bring this down to 700. So you can see it's kind of generally quick. The other thing is, like right now, there's only one level of detail, but the idea is that, you know, in complex video games, like let's say the character is like super far away and it's tiny on the screen, there would be a level of detail where maybe the character is only 50 triangles or something extremely small. And as they get closer, there's more and more details that comes in, and there's a whole logic in the video game engines where you can transition between these levels of details. But the thing is, like, if you have a template that works, if you're like, it needs to be 1,000 pixels on screen, and that always works. Like if once I get a template that works, I can save it and just reuse it very easily in the future, over and over. So basically, just be very aware of your triangle counts. Like when you put a 3D model online, know how many triangles there are in it, know how many texture maps there are in it. Is it like 8 times 4K maps, etc., or is it something much more reasonable, like a 1,000 pixel map or something like that? Okay, so obviously I don't have the right material caster, but I think this can kind of give you an idea of what Simplygon can do. And now I'm at 5,000 triangles, and the character looks kind of great. We lost some detail, especially around the eyes. So then it becomes kind of a strategy of like, you can treat the eyes differently so that you don't lose details and things like that. But I just want to make sure that everybody has at least a little bit of survivable skills when it comes to simplifying the geometry. So probably what I needed to do is, anyways, it was one of those, I'm not sure exactly what I did wrong, but I think I just picked the wrong material caster. So any questions regarding that so far, or I'll stop the streaming. Let's see.
I have one question about optimization. Yeah, I know that Unreal Engine 5 has got a few new sculpting tools inside the app, and I have not yet tried the remeshing, but I wondered whether you had, and if you had, how it compared to something like Simplygon.
I have not. No, I've not played with the Unreal Engine too much. I've always had like these giant frustrations when going in there, or especially I work in complex architecture. I'll bring in the model. I'll be like, I have to calculate all the lighting, and then I come back the next morning and it's crashed, and I was like, okay, no. Like Unity never does any wonky stuff like that, so I just stick with Unity. And also Unity is just kind of better for VR, AR stuff, I find. But I'll go back to Unreal and give it a chance to charm me every 6 months, and so far it has failed. But yeah, sorry. And there's going to be a lot of other tools, right? You can use like I don't remember the tools that people use to create characters, but everybody's going to have their own ways of doing UVs, of doing simplification of geometry. Just find the tools that work for you. But I find Simplygon is, well, it's free and it's one of the best. So at least you should know that it's available in your arsenal.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay. Yeah, anybody else got a kind of a weird direction or a question that they want to ask, or should I just go into a little bit of a generic talk about VR, AR? Question. have you ever made your own AR app? Blah, 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 blah. No, I've not made my own app. What I'll do is I've never published something in a Steam store or in the Apple store or whatever. What I'll do is I'll make a Unity project and I'll bring it to the gallery. For my last project from last year, what I did is there's it's a VR experience and you can just go on my website and download it for free basically. So I'm not trying to sell it. I'm trying to keep it at the art level where I feel like if you sell your art for like $15 a pop online, it devalues it a little bit from the fine art world. It also is going to remove access to people. You're like, oh, check out my VR. Oh, by the way, you got to pay $15. So what I've been doing is I released the VR for free right now. For non-commercial usage. If you want to use it for commercial usage, like a museum, you'd have to pay, and there's a limited amount of those. And then the third way that it's distributed is through a series of NFTs that are basically animation of the VR world. But yeah, I want the VR world to be accessible for free to, I don't want like only 5 rich people to be able to experience the VR worlds that I've made. I want it to go as wide as possible. Let's see. Feel free if you have any questions. I'm just reading the comments. Okay. What else is important? What else is new in the VR AR world? Well, like I said, the new Meta headset is going to kind of open up the door, I think, fingers crossed, to finally having AR art shows in galleries. And also, if you have the $1,500 and the good computer, you can start realistically kind of making VR art shows or AR art shows that people are going to be able to experience in galleries. So I think that's extremely important. It's not something that's just kind of been possible in the last years, really, unless you're, working in a startup in New York or something. So, or just really rich, and then you have to wonder like how the gallery is going to even show your work. So I think it's something to really start considering. The other thing, is that any 3D NFTs you create is an AR piece of art, right? It can be seen through AR. And there's another slight topic, which I don't think we talk about enough, which is curating AR art. So for example, when I curated a show for Aurea Harvey, I went in the mountains and showed her work in the mountains in kind of these timeless settings. And that's something you can do with any 3D artist, right? So let me just see quickly. She's got some new works, but let me just see quickly some of my pieces. Or like the pieces from Touch Sound Art. I'm sorry, I forget your name right now, your real IRL name. But what is it again? Oh, it's not even written on your Twitter. Sorry, but the pieces of Touch Sound Art, right? Like those are very nice, and you can start bringing them in places that that are just going to be very emotive, whether it's at the beach, whether it's in a Roman structure, whether it's where you go on vacation. If you do VR art, I think you should really try to curate your 3D pieces and bring them somewhere that's going to be special, not just in your living room or in the corridor at your school or something like that. So do think about that, and you can also curate other people's artwork in the same way, where you bring him. You're kind of like the director, and you bring him in a space that's going to really enhance the piece and work with the piece, and maybe give it some sort of clash with the environment, etc. All right. Anybody else got a particular question by any chance? Or let me see if there's anything I want to talk about in this PowerPoint. How's your experience with the metaverse, by the way? Have you found something kind of compelling lately, or have you explored VR chat or Altspace VR or some of these more? Oh, there's a question from Hidden. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm a big fan of VR chat simply because it's a great sandbox for being able to build your own world, and it's got a very large existing user base. So you can sort of piggyback onto the fact that if it goes onto the like the user created worlds, there's like a list of those that come up every time you create it. It goes up for like a day. You can get like 100, 200 people going through your world simply because it's up on that list. So it can be a good way to find new people who are interested in VR content. But I know there are a lot of different metaverses and a lot of people have opinions about, which ones are better. I kind of think there won't be one to rule them all, but that's just my opinion, so.
I'm not sure. I don't think the future is one to rule them all, or the sci-fi. The way that people have like made the sci-fi version of the metaverse is like, oh yeah, you just jump, like you open the door and you're the next metaverse. You open the door and you're like in Call of Duty, and then you open the door and you're like watching somebody cook or something like that. I think it's more like the internet.
I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's going to be diverse and it's going to be all over the place and it's not going to be organized. Absolutely. How can you possibly?
Yeah, and we see it, right? It's like it's just like the internet. Like if you go on an accounting website, there may be 50 links to different accounting other websites, but there's not going to be 5 million doors to all of the world. And much like a URL, you can just say, well, there's no door, there's no link, but I want to go to Google. I want to go to Amazon. I want to go to VerticalCrypto, .com, etc. So you don't need to think about everything as a million doors and a million link. It's very much like a spatialized internet in that sense. And you don't need to like go from your cooking show to Call of Duty like with your friends. You can just close the app, open the other app, or like click on the link or go to the URL for that space. So that kind of sci-fi mentality, I think, can be way more logical if we just look at what happened with the internet, basically. So there's a question from Hidden Force. Are you seeing any crossover from other sectors like medical industry? It's a very broad question, right? Because obviously there's lots of uses for VR. We see surgery, etc. I was working at a conference and trying to find some cross-disciplinary people working in VR, and I found a lab in Montreal that specializes in creating avatars, but it's very specifically for people who are treating schizophrenia. So often people with schizophrenia will have kind of like a demon inside their head that looks like a certain person. Oftentimes it's like themselves, and they're seeing themselves as the demon, telling them like, I don't know, like, be violent, everybody hates you, start a fire, whatever, or like, you suck. And so what the therapist will do is they'll say, okay, make the avatar of your demon and I will embody the avatar and I will start insulting you, and then you'll have to react to your demon. So very kind of niche, but I thought it was interesting that there's some mental health stuff in there. There's some novel avatar UIs is really what they were researching. And yeah, they're using VR to kind of like play with reality for people whose reality may be more malleable and more maybe vivid than others, or so yeah, it was interesting how they played with the reality in that type of therapy, and I'm curious to see where it goes and how effective that is. See, Reverse Butcher is writing something. Oh yeah, aged care facilities. Exactly. Like some people are bedridden, right? Or they've had dreams like, I wish I could see the sea before I leave the earth. And much like people with Alzheimer's sometimes are kind of unlocked when they hear this emotional music from their past, or you see some villages for people with Alzheimer's, well, they'll just recreate entire villages indoors, but it's like it was, 60 years ago. There's the general store, and there's like, it's just kind of like a time traveling experience. It's almost like a giant kindergarten for people with Alzheimer's and elderly folks. So I can see how VR could have a very, much cheaper way of achieving that. And yeah, for relaxing, there's what is it called? There's a lot of apps in the VR world that fall into what's called psychonauts. So psychonauts is really the culture of mixing drugs with virtual reality. So if you go on Reddit, for example, and you check out Rift into the Mind, it's a whole forum on, oh, I did shrooms and I did this experience and it was fantastic. And there's experiences that are made especially for that. I think one of them is called Sound Self. It's kind of like hypnotic and meditative. And it's very interesting because it kind of creates a feedback loop and it really gets you into the moment, which is a hard thing to do sometimes. It makes you very aware of yourself, very aware of the moment. And what it does is you have to do these hums. You have to go like hold these tones, and that's the only way to move forward. And the entire environment reacts to these hums, and you also start hearing your past hums or your past things that you've said like 2 minutes ago, or as well as other people humming sometimes. So it's kind of like a nice confusing environment, but it is very therapeutic and a good way to relax, I'd say. So yeah, if you're interested in that, definitely check out, what did I just say was called? Psychonauts is the term, and Rift into the Mind is definitely a good place to start. Okay, so I see a question here. What's a cheap and decent VR headset you suggest? So I'd probably say the Quest 2 is some of the cheapest and most decent. Now the Quest Pro is coming, so you may see some good deals on eBay, etc. When there's a new headset, people sell their old ones, or a couple months after Christmas, people stop playing with the headset, and so there's more headsets on eBay, etc., or on Kijiji. So definitely keep an eye on those used marketplaces if you're looking for a high quality headset. And it's going to change every year, right? But I'd say right now the winner is the Quest 2. And the beauty about the Quest 2, you can use it on its own and it's going to be able to do, so much. But then if you do get a computer, you can plug it into the computer and all of a sudden you've unlocked the entire array of games that are available for VR, assuming your computer is powerful enough to handle the VR. Feel free, if you have any questions, I'm just going to go through the slides and see if there's anything that I want to communicate with y'all. No, I'm uninspired by my own slides. Gotta keep it contemporary. How powerful does your computer need to be? You can always check like Oculus minimum specification, recommended specification. It's gonna come down generally to the graphic card. Now, probably the minimum graphic card they're gonna say is a 2070, RTX 2070. So that's no longer, that used to be like very expensive. And we're no longer in the COVID crisis right now. So assuming there's not another COVID crisis and that we don't go to World War III, the prices should be generally low in the upcoming future. Whereas they were absolutely crazy during COVID because everybody was trying to mine crypto and everybody was at home trying to game or do renders during that time. So 2070, definitely the graphic card is a good investment that you can also replace in the future. So, you want to put as much money aside as possible for the graphic card, basically. Or like in my case, I do very complex models. So I mean, 2 years ago, I had to buy a new graphic card because I hit the limit of what I could model, I think, on my 2070. So I went from a 2070 to 3080 or something like that. It's a whole world, but yeah, basically just put as much money as you can. It's worth the wait to put on the graphic card. But if you're going to start somewhere, just get an Oculus Quest 2. Any other questions at the moment, or? So I think this may be it for today. We can keep it a bit short. But yeah, I hope that, at least you feel a little bit more comfortable with Simplygon. Know that it's there. Know that when you're making a 3D piece, like think about how many triangles this is. If it's over 50,000 or 500,000, you should definitely kind of question yourself and see if you can optimize it more. Just be very aware of that. I see some people being like, oh, this is my first 3D piece, and it's like 2 million, and there's no reason why it's 2 million triangles, or like they'll model hairs and things like that. So definitely the art style that you're going for, if you're going for hyper realistic and you're going to model the individual hair strands, like you're going to have some issues with the triangle count no matter what. But if you go for more cartoony or simple, or you're going to start knowing which part of your geometries are problematic or not, and then you can also tailor some stuff by hand and process different parts differently of your model to create a final model that's not too crazy, basically. And the lower the triangle count, the faster it's going to open on your cell phone, on your aunt's cell phone, all of those old cell phones that are harder to support, as well as just internationally, not everybody has the latest, greatest phone, etc. And so yeah, I think unless there's any questions, maybe this is I see running to class now. All right, so I think this is probably a good time to end. And I hope this was helpful for you, and see you very soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sam. I remember when I had the class with you back in way back in the old days of the second cohort of the residency. I remember this class was groundbreaking for me because I really want to be able to transcend the physicality of jewelry into the digitality of it so that it can be preserved in a way, and also to be I don't know. I just love the idea that, especially jewelry, because I'm a jewelry artist. I love the idea to be able to share my work with people that are from the other side of the world. But um, apart from me taking photos or occasional 3D scans, there's little to do in regards to showing your physical works. And I wonder what you think about the term phygital.
Phygital. So how do you spell it? Figi?
Like, I'm going to spell it right now.
Oh, Phygi.
Yeah, it's
Like
something
physical,
that's,
digital.
yeah, it showed up around the
Phygital.
2020s, and people started thinking that it's what we're going to be using for, like, the word that we're going to be using for mixing realities, but it just sounds a little peculiar to me, and I wonder what you guys think about it.
There's this VR architect slash philosopher called Andrea Kojokaru, and she's somewhere in Europe, and I always enjoy listening to her because she thinks like, oh, so she just goes and like obsesses over these topics. And I see her discussing VR architecture as synthetic spaces. And I think philosophy is a lot about language being extremely precise and a lot of logic into it. So I'm not sure how she arrived at that word. I think it's probably an accurate word, and it's probably well thought out. And so I've been kind of using the word just synthetic spaces, synthetic art, perhaps, as my reference. Phygital, something's wrong with that. Or when you create a new word, it's called a neologism, right? And so I feel like the Latin folks wouldn't be too happy about how that got merged. And I mean, like, what does digital even mean, right? Like, I was looking at these things like, okay, what's digital? What's virtual?
I actually did
So,
did do some researching between the difference of digital and virtual, and there are some
mhm.
subtle differences, and it's very inspiring to check them. As digital is more of
Yeah,
like anything created using a computer language, while virtual
composed of
is,
data.
yeah. Uh, by the way, can you mention that artist that you just said, the European artist that speaks
Oh,
about this?
yeah, Andrea Kojokaru. Let me see here. I'll point you to her Twitter. Um, we're part of the VR architecture Illuminati. Um, Andrea VR, and it's with two E's, so Andrea VR. She
Ah,
is
cool.
a lovely personality.
Awesome. Well, if does anybody else have any questions?
So virtual means being simulated.
Yeah, it's something like a simulation. So, in my opinion, digital virtual is a subcategory of digital. Something virtual is something that happens over the digital,
Hmm.
and that's
It'd be
that's
nice to like
interesting.
just pull all of the definitions of these words and just have a bunch of nerds like talk about it for like 20 minutes and be like, okay, VR art is now going to be called like synthetic art or whatever the right word is. Need to invite Andrea on one of those talks or something.
Yeah, maybe we can have her over for an AMA.
Nice. Or the other day I was talking to Anton about, if he thinks his art is post-internet. It's funny, like a lot of when you're like a digital artist and you're like, oh, what's your art? You have to really kind of come up with like these 3 or 4 descriptors that are going to really describe your practice. And then, yeah, sometimes you're like, oh, your art is like post internet, right? And they're like, no, 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 no. Like they've thought about this before. So it's like, especially digital artists, I feel they have to like, or even I did a bunch of VR demos, what was it, 2 weekends ago? And it was a VR world. And the people after are like, so like this piece is, where is this piece? It's like, doesn't exist. Like it's digital. I mean, it's maybe a generational thing, but they're like, oh yeah, this piece is like in a warehouse somewhere, right? And you somehow digitized it and like you're showing it to me, but like, where's the real piece? Like, no, it doesn't exist. It was made by hand in VR, but it's nowhere to be found. It's like the only thing that's true is your perception and your emotions about it.
We have another
Oh,
question.
yeah, do you release 3D objects as NFTs or do you prefer animations, renders? I am a huge 3D NFT kind of nerd. Yeah, handmade in VR. And there's this kind of idea of like digital craftsmanship, right? Like you see churches that were built over like 3 generations or more, and everything is done by hand with like the masons, etc. And when you look at VR art, you don't see that kind of like craft as much, so much. You see some people will do handmade stuff, but not necessarily like over 6 months or a year or multiple years. So the idea of bringing craftsmanship into the digital realm through VR is very exciting to me, and I think it also there's not a lot of people that will commit that long to a piece. And it kind of maybe works better even in the architecture realm. But but yeah, the idea of digital craftsmanship I think is very important. You don't want to lose that with the digital space. And yeah, just generally, in terms of the NFTs, we've seen some experimental models which are more exciting than others. So code-based NFTs, 3D NFTs. And so I'm not I've always hated taking a 3D model and making an image out of it. It seems degrading. It seems like filtering it for the masses in a way. So I know it's kind of an avant-garde thing and it's not super comfortable right now, but it will become more comfortable. And so I don't want to. It's actually one of the things that doesn't sicken me, but it makes me annoyed that it's like I remember seeing all of these 3D artists and the only way they would present their work is through 2D, and I was like, you're bastardizing your art to make it more consumable. But there's an essence there. There's a beauty there that's lost, and that's unfortunate.
Can I play devil's advocate on that just for one moment? Because I've listened and discussed this topic a lot with some of my VR art compatriots. And when you sell a GLB file or a 3D file, you also hand over the capacity for somebody else to put that in a context that you don't like, or that cheapens the artwork, or that, there's any number of difficult or troubling things that you can do. And as a queer female artist who often works with, giant, naked bodies flying in space, like I don't necessarily want to hand that over to the internet because, you have the dangers of the remix. So I have focused very heavily on actually making really, high quality, very considered, short films or cinematics using these artworks. And I mean, I think that it's a way that we've got at the moment before tech sort of improves and we're able to sort of maybe control how the access is delivered. Anyway, that's just my devil's advocate. I mean, it's not right or wrong. It's just, what's authentic to one's practice. But
it definitely adds a value to bring it into an animation and to make a scenario out of it. I would say when somebody buys your NFT, they can put it in a gallery. They don't have the right to, though, right? You can let them do it. But technically, when they buy your NFTs, they don't have the right to put it in a gallery. We can argue that it's to your advantage if you like it, but you can very much say no. You don't have the right to put it in your metaverse gallery. That did not come with the NFT. It doesn't give you distribution rights. It doesn't give you remixing rights. And that's a whole IP question. But that is. Let's see. Your comment is derivatives should also be your IP. I mean. For me, derivatives are just not allowed. Like if somebody puts my art in a non-nice gallery, I'm going to say take it down. And I've seen those comments on Twitter. Oh, thank you for putting it in my gallery, but I didn't give you the permission, so please take it down. Thank you, bye. So there's that weird thing, right? Like we see things like Proto World, which is like, oh, take all your NFTs and make a gallery out of it. Assuming you have like a good curator will ask for permission from the artist. And I'm saying that and I realize I did a Proto World gallery and I didn't ask the artist, but I did tag them on the Twitter and post. And if they want me to take it down, I'll take it down anytime with full respect. But yeah, like I think artists like, I'm not sure if it was Nicolas Sassoon, they're like, if people don't ask me, like please ask me, but generally it's kind of like not allowed, and it shouldn't be. There's definitely work to be done on that part in terms of like, Versum added the licensing. I mean, to be honest, licensing just, I put no licensing. It's kind of like a hellscape world, right? Like lawyers and who wants to read about licensing. So it's kind of like there's zero license, you don't get anything. Anything that you do want to do with my art, like, is basically a privilege. With that being said, of course, if it's made in good faith and it's not like putting me next to terrible artists, I won't mind and I won't complain about it. But generally, the rule is there's zero licensing when you buy my NFTs, even if in practice it's a bit of the opposite.
Yeah, it's difficult to sort of legislate for that because there aren't a lot of laws in place that are sort of enforceable for us unless we have a lot of money or unless they make a lot of money or unless we're in the same country. And then when you're talking about the metaverse, it can get very complicated pretty quickly.
Yeah, but think about all the controversies and the drama and the engagement you're going to get from fighting like somebody who you're like, they put me in the gallery, and then you're like, 5,000 retweets, like how dare they treat her like this? How dare they treat them like this?
Yeah, maybe, but the internet is often kinder to men than to women, so Twitter wars often don't go in our favor. Just putting that out there too.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Licensing, blah blah blah. Have you ever released in Unity packages NFTs? No, I've not released an NFT Unity packages as an NFT. To me, that seems like it would be way more easy to alter the environment if it was that. But usually it's a GLB, right? So you would take. Oh, I see what you mean. A 3GS space. Yeah, and it opens the whole other topic too of you can do photogrammetry. Like I could probably even take one of your videos, Reverse Butcher, take those frames if you do a 360 and do a photogrammetry of your pieces, right? So I think that's going to be a whole subworld of like stealing people's artwork through photogrammetry. I think we were a bit distracted with AI right now, but the photogrammetry secondary market of stolen works, I think is going to be a very interesting concept in terms of thematically, or a whole artist could be like, all of my pieces are photogrammetry stolen from other people's videos, or from I went to the Disney metaverse and I walked around Mickey Mouse and I did a 3D scan of it, and now my piece is like the stolen Mickey Mouse. Yep. Secondary market of stolen works. I mean, an artist could just make it their entire career, just be, or I don't know if you remember, there was this kind of controversy where somebody walked into a museum and they illegally 3D scanned like a pharaoh or something, or like some Egyptian sculpture. There was doubts because they were like, oh yeah, I just had like a Connect in my trench coat and I walked around it illegally and I scanned it and made a 3D model out of it. Obviously much easier to do in the metaverse. You don't have to hide the fact that you're recording it. And there was some high doubts that it was actually made with the Connect. It was probably a staged, pseudo viral thing going on. But yeah, some food for thoughts. So hopefully that got your brain going a little bit, and you're magically going to find enough money to buy a really good VR headset and computer and become a VR artist and change your career. I mean, hopefully, if that's something that interests you, that somehow is able to arrive on your path. I know it's not easy trying to find all that money when you're a student or just an artist, basically. But yeah, it's probably
usually, by the way, there are some kind of I've been looking to it, and I know that some of our residents, even the ones that are here now, are very familiar with the idea of grants and scholarships and stipends. And I would highly suggest everyone to just Google and just be curious. Some of those websites of the companies and groups and organizations that provide you with these grants, some of those websites are really Web1 and really a hassle to work with, but bear with it. And I'm sure that they're at $600 is not that much if you are going to ask an organization for it and you give really good you have a really good project that you've developed. I think it's okay, and I'm really excited about the fact that currently in our world, a lot of companies are willing to invest in artists. I'm not just saying it lightly. I know that it's been happening more and more for the past 2 years, and yeah, go ahead and find yourself somewhere to apply to, and I'm pretty sure that very soon we're going to be able to share our virtual worlds with each other, and I can't wait to see that happening. To be honest, it's just a whole new playground for all of us to create, and for the ones here from our residents who are 3D artists, 3D sculptural artists, and AR artists, your works, guys, are spectacular, and they amaze me every time that I see you post something new. You create a new world for me to dream in my own way, and I can't thank you enough for that. Same goes to you, Sam. I watch your Instagram stories. Thank you so much for sharing so much of them, even though that some of because most of the times when you have a real life event, it's not possible to be viewed apart from a VR. So it's also nice to share our documentation about our virtually real or digital events. And with that said, I can absolutely talk for hours more on this topic, but um, I want to give the word back to Sam for any last words that you might want to have. And to all of you, if you have any more questions, now is absolutely the time to ask them. And before I let anybody else speak, I'm going to mention that Sam, I think that you're also our one-on-one mentor, right?
Yeah, I've already done 4 or 5 mentorships with this group, so
Awesome.
it's a lot more than last time's.
Yeah, we did make sure that we let everyone know how much of an awesome experience this is. So you'll probably even be getting more of those. So just wanted to remind everyone, Sam is also going to talk to you in one-on-ones. So go ahead and boost your um, fantasy building experiences. And yeah, any last words for me, anyone?
I think that'll be it for today. So yeah, you can book a mentor session if you wish. And I wish you all very good exploration in the metaverse. And somehow that if you want a VR headset or AR headset, that it comes to you. You know, I know I would struggle personally, and I can relate to that. But it was definitely worth it in my you know my circumstance. It kind of changed my life. So hopefully it has a similar effect on you if you so desire. And with that, I think it's probably a good time to close it off. So I'll see you around the Discord and on Twitter. And it was so nice to talk to you all today.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks so much for taking the time and talk soon.
Talk soon. Bye.
Bye, guys. Bye, everyone.